The Scott Jennings Show is proudly sponsored by Lear Capital. Since 1997, Lear has helped Americans protect their retirement accounts and savings with physical gold and silver. With thousands of five-star reviews and $3 billion in transactions, Lear is who I trust to help me buy gold and silver. Visit LearScott.com.
The voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
Okay, we have chaos in America, and today we explore the connection between Democratic policies and the chaos in immigration, criminal justice, in our airports. We'll do it throughout the show. We'll have the latest on the war in Iran with Representative Claudia Tenney. She's on the House Intelligence Committee. She's here to push back on some of the nonsense you've heard from Democrats and media on Operation Epic Fury. We also have an exclusive interview today with Rahm Emanuel. Is he running for president in 2028? Is he the only sane Democrat destined to be in the field? We'll talk education policy and other issues with Rahm Emanuel during the show today. It is Monday, March the 16th. We broadcast live today from Scottsdale, Arizona, and our sincerest thanks to the officer, Brandon Tatum, for the hospitality here at his world headquarters in Scottsdale. By the way, today is the 275th birthday of James Madison, the father of our Constitution. Let's get to the news today, and let's get to our prayers for our friend Susie Wiles, the White House Chief of Staff. The president just moments ago announcing that Miss Wiles has early-stage breast cancer. She is remaining in her post. They caught it early. Prognosis is good. And we pray for Susie and for all cancer patients and survivors who are out there. Reports in the New York Post today suggest that U.S. intelligence sources briefed President Trump last week that the new supreme leader of Iran, the new Ayatollah Mojtaba Khomeini, is probably gay, as in a homosexual, not simply just a happy fellow. Now, this could cause a problem in Iran for a few reasons. Right now, we haven't seen the new supreme leader in public since they announced his ascension to the office. We have seen him portrayed in commentary and statements read by state media and as a cardboard cutout. More Operation Epic Fury news. President Trump gave an update this morning on the weekend bombing of Karg Island today at the White House. We hit the military targets, he says, but not the oil infrastructure. Let's take a listen to the president in cut number 12.
And as you know, we attacked Karg Island and knocked it literally, and destroyed everything on the island except for the area where the oil is. I call it the pipes. We left the pipes. We didn't want to do that, but we will do that. We can do that on 5 minutes notice. It'll be over. But for purposes of someday rebuilding that country, I guess we did the right thing. But it may not stay that way. Just one simple word and the pipes will be gone too, but it'll take a long time to rebuild that. We are aggressively dismantling Iran's defense industrial base, and ability to rebuild its missiles and drone capability is getting down to close to zero.
That's the president this morning at the White House. We're now in the third week of Operation Epic Fury. We'll keep track of all the breaking news on the war throughout today's show. Now on to a thing that they say doesn't exist. Well, it turns out it really does. A federal jury in Texas on Friday convicted 9 people who comprised an Antifa cell. Antifa, they were convicted of rioting, using weapons and explosives, providing material support to terrorists, obstruction, attempted murder of a police officer, and of unarmed correctional officers at the Prairieland ICE Detention Center on July 4th of last year. That is right, you heard me correctly. Antifa operatives were convicted in federal court. Now, you remember this story. These radicals were out there attacking an ICE facility last summer. Terrible stuff. But that did not and does not stop Democrats from constantly denying that Antifa exists. Here's one who covers up for them all the time, the Attorney General of Minnesota, Keith Ellison, in Cut 10.
Because if there really is no Antifa as an institution organization, then anybody who's associated with Antifa-like ideas, can be persecuted. All you have to do is say, prove you're not Antifa. Well, how can you prove a negative? And suddenly they're just going to be able to use that to justify suppressing speech, arresting people, deploying ICE, deploying National Guard, deploying military. So the fact that there is nobody even knows what it is.
Well, we know what it is in Texas now. A jury certainly knows what it is. 9 Antifa members convicted. Now, according to Attorney General Pam Bondi, while Democrats in blue states and cities continue to coddle or deny Antifa, the Trump administration, will continue to pursue these violent radicals who constantly pop up all over the place to cause chaos and mayhem. Speaking of, more of that, sadly, on our highways. An Ohio man and his 11-year-old son are dead, killed by a semi-tractor trailer, another one being driven by a migrant who speaks little English. Yvio Michel, 53-year-old man from Boynton Beach, Florida, was driving a Great Dane semi-truck on Interstate 75 when he failed to keep enough distance. As he approached congestion in traffic, he hit 4 passenger vehicles and another semi-truck. Amanda Gibson, 45-year-old from Lima, Ohio, was driving her Buick at the time. Her 52-year-old husband, Herschel Gibson, and their 11-year-old son were the passengers. Both husband and child were pronounced dead at the scene. Miss Gibson is in serious condition at the hospital, serious injuries, although she did not die in the crash. This migrant semi-tractor trailer driver, Michelle, was charged with 2 counts of negligent homicide, 2 counts of vehicular manslaughter, and failure to maintain an assured clear distance. Michelle, not a citizen, does not speak English, and yet is behind the wheel of a semi-tractor trailer. Now, this news comes as some 200,000 immigrant truck drivers will begin to lose their commercial driver's licenses as they expire under a new Trump administration rule that takes effect today. Can't come soon enough, in my opinion. Just too much of this going on America's highways. This new Trump administration rule bars immigrants who are asylum seekers, refugees, or DACA recipients from obtaining CDLs. We'll keep tracking this story as it unfolds. If you needed more evidence, by the way, that Northern Virginia is a complete disaster when it comes to public safety, well, here's the latest. You won't believe it. High school kids are being subjected to groping in the halls by an illegal immigrant inside their actual school. WJLA reporter Nick Minnock has the details in Cut 11.
Hey, I'm Nick Minnock with 7 News. I'm learning a Fairfax County high school student is charged with 9 counts of assault and battery. And this student happens to be in the country illegally. ICE told me that he entered the country in 2024 and was released under the Biden administration. And now he's charged with assault and battery. ICE told me they lodged a detainer against this man who is in the jail, and Sheriff Stacey Kincaid will not honor that ICE detainer. Now, I looked into it and I spoke to parents of about a dozen victims who tell me that this man, who's 18, will soon be 19, and is a junior at Fairfax County High School, went behind their girls in the hallways at school, and he put his hands in between their legs.
Nick Minnock from WJLA TV on that report. We're trying to get Nick on the show, by the way, to talk about this and other stories that he's breaking in Northern Virginia. But the sheriff there, Kincaid is the name, refusing to honor an ICE detainer to get this illegal immigrant out of our country. And meanwhile, high school girls are being groped in the hallway. New York City, the anti-Semitic attacks have grown so common that Mamdani's government is now changing how they are counting them in the statistics. NYPD says they're going to change up the reporting of hate crimes to make it appear that there are fewer of them. So in New York, they're not doing anything about the anti-Semitism or anti-Semitic attacks. They're just changing the numbers to claim they fixed it, when you and I both know they have not. Sadly, this happens all over the country in blue cities, manipulating police statistics to give off the appearance of safety when there is none. It's Scott Jennings reporting to you today on Salem. Let's get some news about aches and pains. Since discovering Relief Factor last summer, you know, we in the Jennings household have been very, very happy with this product. But there is something new from Relief Factor that you need to know. They have changed and improved the formula. You heard that right. An already great product is even better. Relief Factor has added a premium black pepper extract because it helps your body absorb high-quality key nutrients more efficiently. Simple terms, your body will get even more benefit from what you were already getting from Relief Factor. If you've been listening to me talk about Relief Factor, maybe now will be your moment. Or if you're already taking it, you should know you're getting an enhanced formula. It will be even better and work even smarter to reduce your aches and pains. Here's my advice. Start with a 3-week quick start for just $19.95. You really have nothing to lose. Go to relieffactor.com or call 1-800-4RELIEF. How would it feel to be out of pain? Maybe you will find out with Relief Factor. It's common sense for the American people. I'm Scott Jennings. Stay with us. More breaking news and insights after this.
Hey, it's Scott Jennings. I have a message about crime. It's skyrocketing, and you may already own a firearm. However, before you face the financial, legal, and emotional weight of pulling the trigger, there's a smarter option. It's called Byrna. That's B-Y-R-N-A. Let me tell you about it. Byrna makes less lethal launchers that fire tear gas and kinetic rounds designed to stop an attacker for up to 40 minutes. That gives you time to escape and call for help without deadly consequences. Their best-selling compact launcher is sleek, slim, and incredibly powerful. It's about the size of a smartphone. It's ideal for concealed carry, comfortable, discreet, and confidence building. I got to tell you, I've used it, I've shot it. You would really, really be amazed at what this Byrna launcher can do. It fires at 400 feet per second with serious stopping power, enough to shut down a threat fast, and without the legal and moral complexity of lethal force. Byrna is proudly American. Over 80% of the components are U.S. sourced. Every launcher is hand-assembled in Fort Wayne, Indiana. With over 750,000 of these things sold worldwide, Byrna is best in class. And it's legal in all 50 states. No background checks. It comes straight to your door. Learn more about this at Byrna.com. That's BYRNA.com.
Conversations and stories you simply won't hear from the mainstream media. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
It is Monday, March 16th. We broadcast live from Scottsdale, Arizona today, and from the world headquarters of the officer Brandon Tatum, who will be joining the show here at the end of this hour and the beginning of the next. My buddy Brandon. If you don't know Brandon Tatum, I highly suggest you get in with Officer Tatum. Check this guy out. He's one of the most insightful conservative commentators out there. We're grateful to have him on the show today and for the hospitality here in Scottsdale. You know, whether it is letting violent illegal aliens back into our streets or giving shortened sentences to ISIS sympathizers, it feels like we have too many politicians these days who are willing to let people who want to destroy America roam free. It's obvious we need to change things, but what can be done right now? Why is this happening? What do we need to do to fix the immigration vetting system? My next guest has worked on these issues for a long time and joins us to discuss. Theo Wold, former high-ranking official in the Trump Department of Justice in the first term, now works on national security issues as they relate to immigration policy and this out-of-control judiciary. Theo, thanks for joining us here on the show. Last week, we did a lot of reporting on the Old Dominion shooting, and we also are now learning more about the ties between the person who attacked the synagogue in Michigan and Hezbollah in Lebanon. As you see these stories and these issues that you work on, what is going through your mind? What is happening, and what do we need to do? Welcome in.
Thanks for having me, Scott. Yeah,
Of course.
I think this is a question so many Americans are asking right now. And really, here's how I would break it down. You've got this toxic witch's brew of an open, permeable immigration system. And that's not just illegal immigration. That's our legal immigration system that has really stopped doing any kinds of enhanced vetting on the kinds of people who are coming in on short-term labor visas or on some of our Byzantine parts of our immigration system, like the diversity lottery, where the diversity lottery system doesn't really privilege any kind of prior connection to the United States. The least connection you have to the United States, the better in terms of getting a green card out of that.
Yeah, Theo, help me understand something. I'm watching these stories, and in the case of the Old Dominion shooter, you have someone who came here from Sierra Leone, became a naturalized citizen. Oh, I think we're having some issues with Theo's connection,
both
guys.
Illegally and legally, who have no interest in actually assimilating to American culture or adopting an American constitutional sort of framework. These are people who are coming here with the precise purpose of undermining our laws and really undermining our social values at the same time. The toxic witches.
Hey guys, I know we're having this conversation live on the air, but I think we're having some issues with Theo's connection. But basically, here's the issue. And when Theo comes back, I want to ask him this question. We have these people coming into the country. In the case of the Old Dominion shooter, we have this person come into the country at some point from Sierra Leone. He becomes a naturalized citizen. He joins the Virginia National Guard. He then tries to materially help ISIS. He is charged and convicted for trying to help terrorists. Now, all the while, he's now a citizen. He goes to prison for a number of years. A judge lets him out of jail early. And so this person who came into the country apparently underwent very little vetting before he became a naturalized citizen, then tells us directly, I am a literal terrorist, is out on the street and is not denaturalized and is not deported. In Michigan, we have someone in Michigan who eventually rams his car into a synagogue. We find out later his brother is a Hezbollah commander. So again, we have people in the country who are simply not being vetted, and we are giving them status, whether it's asylum status or green card status or even in some cases citizenship status. And once you get a status, particularly citizenship, it's almost impossible to get people out of the country. And so the real question here is, why? We've let in millions of people, and a great many of them, by the way, are all claiming asylum, and that's how Democrats have clogged up the asylum system. That's why they've done it. They want to keep these people here for as long as possible. They know if you have momentum in the immigration system, if you have momentum for being here illegally, it's hard to get rid of you. Ask Kilmer Abrego Garcia. That guy's been here for years, and the momentum he has built up has kept him here. Mahmoud Khalil, there's another example. But effectively what we are learning in week after week after week, story after story after story, that we have people in the country who've been granted a status, who are here to commit mayhem and terror against the American people. Same situation at the shooting at the bar down in Austin, Texas. These two guys from Pennsylvania who drove up and threw the IEDs in New York City. The real question here is, now that we have all these people with status and we know all these terrorism links, what are we going to do about it? That's the question. We'll have to get Theo back on the show again to discuss it. Take a break. When we come back, Claudia Tenney from New York is here. We'll talk Iran after this on the Scott Jennings Show.
Hey, it's Scott Jennings. You know, I got to tell you, I think nutrition has gotten way too complicated. Every week there's a new powder, a new lab-created formula, some new breakthrough. But here is the truth. We've been told since we were kids to eat our fruits and vegetables. Nobody really had to explain why. We just did it. Because when you eat whole foods, you're getting phytonutrients, those natural compounds that your body uses to adjust, repair, and respond every single day. That's not hype. That's how human beings were designed. That's why I take Balance of Nature. They use a tailored vacuum cold process that stabilizes the phytonutrition in fruits and veggies, so you're getting real whole food nutrition, not synthetic substitutes. Their whole health system includes fruits and veggies plus fiber and spice, 47 ingredients in one simple routine. I take it myself. If you want to fight the good fight, go to balanceofnature.com to subscribe and save today. Join hundreds of thousands of customers in one simple routine that is changing the world.
The voice of reason, common sense for the American people. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
Monday, March the 16th. Thanks for joining us here on Salem. It's Scott Jennings, hoping to connect with Congresswoman Claudia Tenney from New York here in just a few moments. Want to talk to her about the latest developments on the war in Iran. Also, This buffoon, Chris Murphy, he's on the Senate Intelligence Committee. He keeps saying crazy things. I'm going to play that for her. I want to get her reaction. I think this guy, honestly, is walking into these Intelligence Committee briefings and coming out and lying through his teeth to the American people under the guise of, well, I've seen these things. You can't see it, but let me tell you. I think it's awful. I'm going to talk to Claudia about that. First, I do have a message that every parent or grandparent needs to hear. More kids are being targeted online right now than ever before. These gaming platforms, social media, messaging apps, they're not being protected very well by big tech, frankly. Although I would note the other day the Energy and Commerce Committee did pass the App Store Accountability Act. That's a step in the right direction. But things are happening right now. And these companies, they profit from all this screen time and engagement. Predators slip through the cracks. Our friends and partners over at Child Help, as you know, they run the National Child Abuse Hotline. They hear from kids every day who wind up in one of these games, one of these chat rooms, and they tell them stories like, I've been contacted by an adult who misrepresented himself, and, you know, they're demanding things from me like pictures. They're threatening to call my parents. These kids are being groomed and manipulated by these predators in these apps and in these chat rooms and in these games. So Child Help, here's what they do. They have the hotline. They have trained counselors. The kids get in touch with them. They save these kids. They save these kids from these predators. They help calm them down. They help give them a plan to get out of these situations. And that's why Child Help matters. It's why I support Child Help. And I donate to Child Help. And I specifically donate because I want kids to have someone they can call to help them get out of these harrowing situations. $27. That's what I'm asking you to donate. Drop in the bucket, folks. $27. If you can save one child from child abuse, that's all it would take. That's what fuels one of these calls to the National Child Abuse Hotline. So make your donation today. Go to childhelp.org/Scott or text ChildHelp to 94878 and donate. Again, just $27 today. Joining me now on the line, House Republican Conference member of the Intelligence Committee as well, also on the Ways and Means Committee, Claudia Tenney, Congresswoman from New York. Welcome back to the show, Representative Tenney. We're glad to have you today.
So great to be on. And I just want to say thank you for your terrific speech at the Republican Issues Conference down in Doral. It was fantastic. Everyone loved it. And I got to tell you something, everybody wants a copy of it. So I don't know if you have one, but we'd love to get that.
I will forward a copy to you, and you can distribute it to all your friends. And I was honored to be asked to talk to the members of Congress down there, and it was a wonderful setting, and we had some great conversations about the future of our country. So honored by your compliments, and thanks for the invite. Representative Tenney, I want to start with the issue of Iran. Something that's been bothering me for the last few days is one of your colleagues over on the Senate side. His name is Chris Murphy. And he is a senator prone, I think, to wild hyperbole all the time. But they let him go to the Intelligence Committee over in the Senate, and then he comes out and says crazy things like this in cut number 3. Let's listen.
I just came from a 2-hour closed-door classified briefing on the war. It just confirmed to me it's totally incoherent. We are not going to be able to achieve any of our stated objectives. But I mention it because it's another closed-door briefing. We have still not yet heard a full explanation as to why this is necessary.
Claudia, this man lies all the time. You are on the House Intelligence Committee. Can you please set the record straight and tell the truth to the American people where Chris Murphy is lying to the American people?
Yeah, Chris Murphy has Trump derangement syndrome, and it's really sad because we are in what I think is a very courageous and critical move by the president. I'm not sure anyone that I can think of in modern history could be as courageous as President Trump to make the move that he has made in Iran. It's very important that we support our troops, we support the mission, and the mission has a lot of layers to it, and I don't think you need to be a genius to figure this out. First of all, Iran has been a threat to our nation for many, many years, all the way back to '79. We watched the humiliation of our hostages. I'm old enough to remember that. I was a high school student. Into bombing the Marines in Beirut, killing thousands of Americans throughout the last 40, 50 years of this brutal regime. Not to mention the complete destruction of their own people. I mean, just murdering and killing women after Mahsa Amini stood up. They have been obviously aligning with China. We know that. They've been aligning with Russia. they've been coming into and interfering in the Western Hemisphere, where President Trump is taking a leading role finally, as we've seen China and Russia intervening down there. And what I think is interesting, and not a lot of Democrats, I don't hear any Democrats talking about it, but our greatest adversary in the world right now is really China. So what a dangerous combination to line up nukes with Iran, a very large country, in a very important part of the world. And what they've done is by minimizing China's ability to get 90% of the oil that Iran sells is to China. And that's about 20% of China's purchases, and another 10% is Venezuela. So what President Trump is doing is really putting China in a tough spot and making them more amenable to working with us on our trade issues, on supporting American initiatives, and bringing a lot of our supply chains back, but also restoring American dominance in the world. Because I think a lot of people know China, and you'll talk to anyone that's in any of the industries, it doesn't matter, whether it's defense, whether it's producing our pharmaceuticals, producing our goods and services. China has gotten almost on par with the United States in many ways, and they're a real threat. Taking this out, taking malign interveners like Iran out. Also, not to mention the fact that look what Iran has done in the Middle East. You have all kinds of countries there wanting to come together. You saw President Trump's historic Abraham Accords, bringing these countries together and taking a novel approach instead of waiting for the so-called Palestinian plight industrial complex to finally take hold. That was never going to happen. And President Trump brilliantly saw through that and said, let's do an Abraham Accords. Let's see who in the region wants prosperity, instead of continuing to foster Iran's malevolence and using all their money, by the way, to create these proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, and disrupting everyone in the Middle East. I was in Israel for 10 days last summer. Mm-hmm. I spent, a good amount of time with the Druze who were under siege, and many of them slaughtered and murdered in Syria earlier last year, and also met with Arab sheikhs in Hebron. And they're like, enough. We don't like the Palestinian Authority. We want peace and prosperity. We want to work with our Israeli and Christian friends. We want to see our children and grandchildren survive and thrive. We don't want any more of this. And this is really what this is really all about. And Trump has actually shown that we can get rid of this menace, and we can see a chance for prosperity in a country, by the way, that was very sophisticated before the takeover in 1979. You can see, the footage from the 70s. And I have a lot of friends who are from the Iranian diaspora in my home communities who have told me about this. One was actually a Savak CAA double agent, who had a fatwa on him when the Ayatollah first took over in 79. They hit him in a dairy farm up in upstate New York. And he was a friend and a client of mine when I was an attorney. So I've been involved in this process for a long time. I've seen what the Iranian regime has done. I know this is a long-winded answer, Scott. I'm sorry. But there is a lot more to this. And think of the future we could have because of the courage of President Trump in laser focusing on this. Now, it's not going to be easy. It's difficult. And obviously, I was with a son who's a major in the Marine Corps, to these families who have lost their loved ones and lost their family members. It's tragic. It is a terrible situation. My heart goes out to them. It is really hard to watch. But I think what happens right now is we are going to see the future of this region and the future of the United States be stronger and more secure and more prosperous.
Representative Claudia Tenney from New York is our guest. Representative, you're on the House Intelligence Committee. Something that is of intense interest to people this morning is, what is the status of the Iranian regime? Who is in charge right now? A few days ago, the Iranians said that the Ayatollah's son is the new supreme leader. We haven't seen that person in public. We did see him depicted as a cardboard cutout. And the New York Post is reporting today that the president was briefed recently that he is in very bad shape, that he's severely injured. We think he's alive, and then they may have also told the president that this man is a homosexual, which I'm not certain how would work at the top of this regime in Iran. I know there's a lot of things you hear in your intelligence briefings that you can't tell us, but what can you tell us? What is the status of the leadership of the regime? And, are they on shaky ground right now? What do we know, and what can you say?
Yeah, I think they are on shaky ground, but we've seen that they have a lot of resources, and they're retaliating against a lot of people in the region, especially, surprisingly, some countries who would be more aligned with them. But we know that he has had some major damage to a leg, that he may be hospitalized. or in a hospital, an intensive care situation. We don't even know if he is. We've heard reports that he's in a coma. I'm going to be going down to the Intelligence Committee room today to read some of the reports and the latest on that. I haven't done it yet. We'll be down there this afternoon in a meeting. Whatever is open source or unclassified, of course, we can talk about. But it looks like he may or may not be able to even function. We don't know. Whether he's a homosexual or not, I don't know if that matters. I think there were reports that he was actually having issues, that he was related to, male issues. And I think that's what the rumor was going. He had to go to England to get some kind of, I don't even know if I want to go down that road. Something.
Yeah, no, we read it. Yeah, I guess the point is that they made an announcement of this new Ayatollah. No one's really seen him. There's all this other intelligence about, we'll just call it lifestyle issues, which again probably wouldn't be a problem in a Western nation, but in Iran, where you have a theocracy in charge, and we know what they do to people over there. It all seems very strange. And of course, as we're prosecuting a war as Americans, we're just wondering, what is going on there? What does the regime look like? I've got about 30 seconds, and 30 seconds only. I want to pivot to one other topic, and that's the idea of budget reconciliation. We heard when I was down with you all at Doral the other day, a lot of people want to do it, and I heard a few folks in the conference throwing a little cold water on it. Just 30 seconds. Can we get budget reconciliation done? Can we pass a bill to advance the president's agenda this year in the spring?
I think everyone wants to get all the rest of the things we did not get done in H.R. 1, the Working Families Tax Cuts done with the Reconciliation 2.2. The big issue is, can we get it done? Do we have enough votes in our House with a one-seat majority, and can we get it through in the Senate? That's the only issue. There's a lot that we'd like to continue to do, but there is so much that we have gotten done and so much that Republicans need to talk about that was in that bill last year. That is a groundbreaking bill.
Yeah, it really was. People are looking for action. Let's hope the team pulls together. Claudia Tenney of New York, thanks for joining us. We have to take a break. When we come back, Brandon Tatum, the Officer Tatum, is here on the Scott Jennings Show. Stay with us.
The very definition of never back down. Here's Scott Jennings.
It's Monday, March 16th. We are broadcasting from Scottsdale, Arizona today, and we are in the world headquarters of the Officer Tatum. My man, Brandon Tatum, is here, and I've said this to you many times. Dear listeners, if you don't know Brandon Tatum, follow this man on X, on Instagram, whatever. He's one of the greatest conservative commentators. I think one of the most important cultural voices we have right now. Thank you for having us in again. We always love being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on your show. You're always welcome here, man, and I think I learned a lot from you.
Well, we're glad to discuss the issues with you. Your insights on the issues are interesting, and I want to start here. I think we have... You're a former police officer, by the way. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like things are going crazy in the public safety space. We got this guy in Michigan whose brother is a Hezbollah commander. Somehow he's in our country ramming a car into a synagogue. We got this guy at Old Dominion, was convicted of helping ISIS. We let him out of jail. He's a naturalized citizen, but we just say, fine, you're free to roam. He winds up killing a veteran at ODU and wounding 2 others before the students subdued him. We've got stories in Northern Virginia about illegal aliens in the schools who are molesting girls in the hallway, and the sheriff there will not honor ICE detainers. It feels like, Brandon, there is a concerted effort right now to inject chaos and mayhem and, frankly, just unsafe environment on the American people in blue states and blue cities across this country. As a former officer and as you watch all this unfold, how is all this hitting you right now?
It's crazy to me, to say the least. I don't understand how a person can put their right hand up, swear to protect an oath, to protect the people, put a uniform on, or serve people who put the uniform on, and cannot hold illegal aliens and terrorists accountable. It is the craziest thing that I've ever heard. I honestly believe, to your point, that this is intentional.
Yes.
I do not believe that if Donald Trump wasn't the president, that they would be doing the same thing. They want to create chaos. They want all these illegals to be in our country. They knew terrorists were coming into our country way back when they were letting them in. It wasn't just illegal aliens. This wasn't just migrant workers. They knew terrorists were coming into our country, and they wanted it that way. And therefore, they can control the narrative. And now that Trump is the president, they wanted to escalate even more.
This chaos theory, I think you're dead right. They want people to believe there's chaos, and then they want voters to say, well, who's in charge? We'll punish them. The reality is, who's causing the chaos? Let's also look at the airport right now. Department of Homeland Security remains shut down because Democrats will not open it. We're getting a lot of reports, and I've been in them and talked to people who've been in airports the last few days. The lines are getting longer and longer and longer because the TSA guys have now missed 2 paychecks. Some of them have to go take other jobs to feed their families. This is also chaos. And I would say if we're having less TSA scrutiny at the airport, also the possibility of more problems of people getting through. This is purely a Democratic ploy. It's a stunt. And it's chaos on travelers, but it may be more chaos just in terms of safety at the airport.
Well, I hope that people are smart enough to realize who's the problem here. Just because you're enduring it under the Trump administration don't mean it's Trump. It means that when you look at who's not passing the budget, they can do it, but they refuse to do it. I saw Cory Booker on TV just the other day making up lies and being deceptive. Well, why? This is the American people. We're all one. It don't matter who's the president. I don't care if Joe Biden was in office. I want him to do well because that means our country does well. But for some reason, they can't get Donald Trump because they know that ICE is doing the right thing. They want to virtue signal their way out of, truth and transparency in law enforcement, and especially against immigration or illegal immigrants. But the crazy thing is they don't want that. They don't want to work with him. They want it to be terrible. And I'm hoping that people see that so they can vote for the right party, because Democrats are just diabolical at this point.
Yeah, there's a lot of anti-American sentiment out there. We've got a war going on, and I see Democrat politicians. I mean, you can tell they want this to fail. They want us to fail at war so they can say, told you Donald Trump is terrible. They want chaos in American cities so they can say, told you they can't govern. They want chaos at the airport to say, told you nothing's working. But it is affirmative and aggressive actions they are taking to cause the chaos. And honestly, this anti-American sentiment, the idea that we have to live in a failed state, or it was a lady on CNN the other night. She said, in the war with Iran, America are the bad guys. And then we're fighting this regime. Look, Brandon Tatum is here. He's our guest. We're going to take our break. He's sticking around for the top of the next hour. This is the Officer Tatum, and I want you to hear everything he has to say. It's common sense for the American people. I'm Scott Jennings in Scottsdale. More after this.
If the leftists haven't had enough yet, there's more. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
Okay, it's Monday, March the 16th. Scott Jennings here, broadcasting on the road once again, live from Scottsdale, Arizona. I am with the Officer Brandon Tatum. We're in his world headquarters today, so that's the room that you see. We're going to talk to Brandon in just a moment after we do a quick check of the headlines. USA Baseball last night eked out a 2-1 win against the Dominican Republic. Great game. Amazing baseball played last night, and so the Americans will now go to the championship game, and they play the winner of Venezuela versus Italy. Italy on a historic magical run in the World Baseball Classic. This just into the show, Attorney General Pam Bondi has announced a legal victory for the Trump administration on immigration. The First Circuit Court of Appeals has ruled that the Trump administration can continue deporting illegal aliens to third world countries. In New York City, Mayor Mamdani has his latest tax proposal out, and it has to do with New York's estate tax. He wants to move it to 50% and have it kick in at $750,000 instead of the $7 million that is current. So that would be absolutely higher taxes on middle-class families coming out of Mamdani. And speaking of similar issues, and this coming out of California, billionaire Uber co-founder Travis Kalanick is joining the growing exodus from California. He's now moving to Austin, Texas, just weeks before a proposed wealth tax in California would have targeted his estimated $3.6 billion fortune. So that's a check of the headlines. We'll keep track of the breaking news throughout the hour. You're listening to The Scott Jennings Show. We're talking to our friend, the Officer, Brandon Tatum. Brandon, tell the people, what's the best way to consume Brandon Tatum content right now? Is it Instagram, YouTube? Like, where do you want people to go first to get into the Brandon Tatum world?
Well, I say I've created a situation where I'm omnipresent. So anywhere where you want to consume content, I'm there. Facebook, all of that. YouTube is my biggest channel. We upload every single day on YouTube, and then Instagram is my second and we upload quite often there, and I post some other fun videos there too.
All right, YouTube. So The Officer Tatum on YouTube. Now you're, I guess, conservative influencer. I always use the term commentator. That may be old-fashioned, but that's what they call me on CNN. But you are an influencer because, you know, what you say does have a tremendous impact. In the conservative ecosystem right now, we have like influencer wars going on. We have podcaster wars. We have people sniping at each other. It's gotten quite personal and quite nasty. A lot of it is over the issue of the war, and frankly, let's be honest, a lot of it is over the issue of Israel and the Jewish people. You have been an outspoken supporter of Israel. You've been an outspoken supporter of the president's posture on Israel, and you and I are both watching a lot of conservative influencers right now take a totally different position and, you know, dipping into these conspiracy theories. When you see all this happening, kind of lay out your position for us. How did you arrive at your views on this? And also just as it relates to conservative politics, I assume you agree with me. This is terrible. Terrible for the movement, this infighting and sort of falling to these conspiracy theories and sniping as opposed to staying focused on the true problem, which is the left and what they're trying to do with America.
It's very interesting, Scott. You made a great observation. I wonder how much of this had to do with Charlie Kirk, you know, because Charlie Kirk almost was holding all this back. I don't think we had this much infighting and this much, you know, hatred towards one another on our own side until Charlie Kirk died, and I think it created a vacuum, and now everybody's jockeying for a position. I'm right, this person's right, or whatever the case may be, and I think it's absolutely terrible for us because we are traditionally on the right side of history. If we work together, we will dominate in politics. We'll dominate in the midterms. I don't think a Democrat will ever be elected to office again, ever, unless they completely change. But instead, we're being ignorant by fighting over stupid stuff that should not matter. But it's a spiritual battle, and I think that's what it has come down to, and this is the reason why we have to continue to endure and not capitulate, because people that are on our side, and I think is the side of common sense, the side of understanding what God said about Israel and all of the above, people on our side have to hold firm, even if it does cause us rift between our side, because those who are going out, turning their back on Donald Trump, acting like as if we're not superior in this war, acting as if we're not executing this war for the benefit of our country too.
Yeah.
And you know, the conspiracies and all that stuff, like those people have to be challenged, and we can't capitulate to try to make amends and be nice to them because it could cause us political ramifications. We have to hold the line, no matter if it's left or right.
Yeah, I heard Megyn Kelly the other day say that the soldiers who've died in this war, the American soldiers, said that they died for Israel. No, they died for their country. They wear American flags on their uniforms. And they're involved in a righteous cause here. The commander-in-chief is doing the right thing. Now, if you want to oppose that, that's fine. But once the commander-in-chief makes a decision and our troops are committed to battle, I don't know. I just think if the family members of those soldiers heard someone on the right say, oh, they died for another country. No, they died as American heroes.
100%.
I just thought that was a despicable thing to say, honestly. Look, if you want to have a policy difference with Trump, fine. These are soldiers. They have families. They are proud of their service to the American government. And as conservatives, I just think we have to talk about these military families better than that.
100%. And the only reason that I think Megyn Kelly and others are even questioning how they died or who they died for is because they have Israel derangement syndrome. It's almost like once people go down the path of hating Israel or having these conspiracies against Israel, thinking the Jews run everything and they control everything and they control the government. Once you go down that path, I think spiritually God opens your mind up to being a reprobate mind. Like you're no longer protected in your consciousness and you're willing to be deceived and say anything, even if it's nonsensical. She knows better than to spit in the face of men and women who put their uniform on to say that they died for a foreign country. She's not serving. She don't know what they are thinking. She don't know what their families represent. She's never served in the military. She don't know what the command is. She's never been to boot camp. She's never put the uniform on. So how dare you tell anybody what reason they died? Last time I checked, when they died, they had an American patch on their sleeve, and they swore an oath to protect this country, both foreign and domestic. That's what our military service is. And for somebody to be so ridiculous because they hate Israel or whatever they feel about Israel, that they're willing to say that. I mean, I think she wouldn't even say Iran, but she felt like she had to balance it. She wanted to just say they died for Israel. Because, and if you notice, all of the same characters are saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Not even with nuance. They're just flat out saying, this is Israel's war. What? I don't understand what the obsession with Israel is. America is a superpower. We run the world. I don't know if anybody forgot that. We run Israel. They need us. If it wasn't for America, Israel would not exist, in my personal opinion. So who needs who?
And the President of the United States, Donald Trump, isn't run by any other country.
Yeah, he can't even run himself. Like, his own consciousness is...
The left the left has argued this, oh, it's a tool of Russia, he's this, he's that, he loves to... No, Donald Trump makes his own decisions based on intelligence he's getting, based on his own views. His own views on Iran have been clear for decades. Yes. They're never going to get a nuclear weapon. I'm not going to permit it. He is a president who actually drew red lines and enforced them, unlike Obama and others. I think this is 7 presidents too late, and Trump is the one that had the guts to stand up to these fanatics.
Well, Scott, they always, all the presidents, I think all the way back from Obama, they were all saying the same thing. Even Kamala Harris, they said the same thing. Iran is a big threat to America.
Yes.
They cannot get a nuclear weapon. I don't think there's any president from Obama all the way to Trump's second term that have denied or rejected that idea. It's been the same all the way through. It's only because Trump is doing something about it. When you make a claim, this is the thing about the difference between the left, and it's called wusses. The left are wussies, they're cowards. They talk a lot, but they don't want to do nothing. And that's the same thing about how we see our military. Our military are, they're men and women who are brave heroes. We don't just talk. We do something about it. And when we do something about it, we have to be in support of our military and the president.
Well, and the president's shown amazing instincts on Iran from the first term all the way through this one. I think he's on the right track. And more than anything, I want American success. That's what we're here to cheer for, and that's what Brandon Tatum is for. Check him out on YouTube, The Officer Brandon Tatum. We're in Scottsdale, and it's the Scott Jennings Show. More with Rahm Emanuel is here right after this.
Ready for more common sense? Here's CNN's senior political commentator, New York Times best-selling author, and America's favorite political pundit, Scott Jennings.
It is Monday, March the 16th. Common sense for the American people. We here at the Scott Jennings Show are dedicated to bringing you conversations with the most interesting and important people in American political affairs. We're about to do that now. Our next guest is Ambassador Rahm Emanuel, my colleague, by the way, at CNN. I'm having Ambassador Emanuel on because he is one of the most interesting people in the Democratic Party, has a lot of experience, and may be running for president in 2028. By way of introduction, he was ambassador to Japan under the Biden administration. Prior to that, mayor of Chicago for 8 years. Prior to that, White House chief of staff under Barack Obama. Prior to that, member of U.S. Congress. Prior to that, major advisor to Bill Clinton. And right now is saying a lot of things about a lot of issues that are very unique in the Democratic Party. Ambassador Emanuel, thank you for coming on the Scott Jennings Show.
Thanks, Scott. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm out in Scottsdale. I don't know where you are today, but my world travels continue. It's Chicago. I saw a video earlier. It looks like the weather's not super great there. But look, we're going to have a couple of segments here, a short one, and then we're going to take a break and have a long one. And this is our shorter go. And I want to start here. You are, I think, unique in the people who are putting themselves out there as a potential candidate for president in 2028. You're unique in your party on a number of issues, and I want to get into those issues when we have our longer block here. But start here. What and when will the decision point be for someone like you about whether to enter this race in 2028? There's a lot of Democrats banging around out there, but how will you and when will you sort of make this decision about whether to do it yourself?
Well, one is, do you have what I think is an agenda and idea of the future that deals with and addresses what I think is a big angst out in the American public? I think one of the exciting things about 2028, unlike our last two presidents who try to recreate a past, this is about how to build a future that has more Americans part of it. And, having put my name on the ballot 6 times, is your head, your heart, and your gut all aligned? in that? And do you really have, which is why I have focused on education and our children, do you have the kind of what I say tough times require a tough leader? I think I've proven to make tough decisions, but I got to do a gut check and make sure it's not like I'm going for my Wikipedia page is empty or anything like that. But do I have something to offer that I think addresses what ails America? And you check it. I'll do a final gut check at the end of the election, and then I'll make a go, no go.
You've been involved in Democratic politics for a very long time. Is 2028 the most wide open primary situation in your career? Is it comparable to anything else you've seen in the past?
Closest to, is actually closest to either Obama 08 or more like Clinton 92. Because Democrats have lost pretty consistently under Bill Clinton. There's Jimmy Carter loss in 80. There's Walter Mondale's 84. There's also the loss in 88. Going into 06 and then 08, Democrats had lost 2000, 2002, and 2004. So both of them have predicated losses. That's true here. The other part that's also true is there's been a distinction of a class, and I say around President Biden's administration, where there's kind of a clean slate. Then the third piece, Scott, about politics, if you look at our party, I think one of the mistakes is you go from President Obama, Secretary of State Clinton, but she's a senator, Joe Biden, senator, but also vice president, Kamala Harris, senator, but also vice president, too concentrated in the Senate, where our real strength is out in the country. And I think I'm hoping that the party sees, what happens between the coastline and more importantly outside the Senate chambers as where the future is for the party and for the country.
Do you think you have the most unique blend of both federal experience and local political service? Would that be best for your party to go with someone who can do both?
Well, Scott, as you know, all your strengths are your weakness. And so the same thing. But I think one of the things that ails our party and ails our country is it's weak and woke, and nobody looks here at this as either weak or woke. Second, I do think the times call for, in my sense, is a tough times call for a tough leader. I have proven to make tough calls. Third, I think in these times, and we're seeing in real time as you and I are talking, you have to be comfortable in the classroom. You have to be comfortable in the situation room. You have to be comfortable in the family room. And you don't need to occupy the bathroom, the smallest room in the house.
That's Rahm Emanuel. He's the former. I'm going to stop you right there because we got to take a break. I want to continue down this path because what you're saying is really the meat of the conversation. That's Rahm Emanuel. We'll take a break. More with him when we come back on the Scott Jennings Show.
News, comment, and the stories and facts the mainstream media refuses to discuss. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
It is Monday, March 16th. We're broadcasting live from Scottsdale, Arizona today. Common sense for the American people. And we're having a conversation this hour with the former mayor of Chicago, former member of Congress, former ambassador to Japan, Rahm Emanuel, who may well be one of the people on the Democratic side who runs for president in 2028. Rahm, thank you for joining us. I want to read something that you wrote recently. You were laying out before the break, some of the things about the Democratic Party that you are having trouble with. And I read a piece that you wrote in the Washington Post. I'm going to say this out loud here. You said, "My real point was that we're facing a Sputnik moment in education, and almost no one among the nation's purported adults seems to want to solve the problem. Democrats can't be the party that believes in equity as a core principle while simultaneously being complacent about math scores still languishing below pre-pandemic levels and reading scores hitting their lowest in more than 30 years. And you, on top of that, have been a proponent of exporting the Mississippi education model to other states to try to correct all of this. Take us through your thinking on what I just read and this idea of changing up how we're doing education in America."
Well, I went to Mississippi because they went from 49th to 9th statewide in reading scores and beating everybody else in the country. They've gone dramatic, and if you did account for demographics, they're number one in America. Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, and Tennessee replicate Mississippi and have seen, and since they've done it, rapid growth. So there's a massive solution to a massive problem. If we're not doing third grade reading and 50% of our kids are failing, what makes you think fourth and fifth grade are going to be any easier? And so that's a solution. And to me, this is the most important thing we can do. I grew up in a period of politics, Scott, where you had Governor Clinton, Governor Hunt, Governor Riley, Governor Zell Miller, Governor Lawton Childs, Governor Winters. These guys were leaders in education, meeting Ronald Reagan in the Nation at Risk report that kept us on a 30-year trajectory of improving by fits and starts our reading and math scores. And if I ran for president, this is going to be a cornerstone, because you can't get to the middle class without having an education system that provides you the ticket. So I went there. I've laid out a total reform in high school. We did this in Chicago. 50% of our kids were graduating with college credit out of high school. We went from a 56% graduation rate to an 84%. We also then, the other piece I did, you couldn't get your high school degree without showing us a letter of acceptance from either a college, a community college, a branch of the armed forces, or a vocational school. And we had 98% compliance with that requirement. So and then in 2 weeks, I'm going to do it in community colleges, and then eventually I'm going to do the BA. But I'm going to reform the entire system so it meets the challenge of the 21st century. And that's how you unlock a future for people. But our party got caught into bathroom and locker room access and never focused on classroom excellence. We were all wrapped up about a pronoun one child wanted to use and lost sight of the fact that 30 of her classmates couldn't tell you what a pronoun is, couldn't define it. And as a parent, as somebody who the mayor took on and improved reading scores, math scores, to where Stanford called it the single best of the top 100 school systems in the country, this is fundamental. Now, if you don't like it, don't vote for me. If I decide to run, I'm comfortable with that.
Tell me something about politics, the politics of education, though, inside the Democratic Party. Obviously, we have a conservative audience here. Our perception is that the education, vectors inside the Democratic Party are almost entirely dictated by the teachers' unions. They've not been fans of some of the states that you mentioned that have seen dramatic improvements in reading and math and other test scores. How would you deal with that as a candidate for president, balancing the needs of a major constituent group, which would be the teachers' unions, versus what you've observed are very real-world positive outcomes of reforms that may have come over the objections of those unions?
Well, my own take on this, Scott, is the truth is Republicans have abandoned public schools and Democrats have abandoned standards and accountability, and our kids are falling through the cracks. There's enough blame to go around. Now, my question is, how do you fix it? I went to Mississippi because they've showed us the road forward. I think I had, based on Chicago, I have something on high schools. Lay it out on what I did on vocational ed. You serve the armed forces. When you come out, 10,000 signing bonus to go into becoming a tradesman. But we have to reform this, and there's enough blame. Now, I also think my results speak for themselves. Yes, the teachers' union leadership will be against. But I said this at AEI conference over the weekend, I just want to be honest. Is that a challenge? Sure. But you know what's a bigger challenge? Poverty and broken families. Now, if you told me, based on the fact that here in the city of Chicago, third largest system in America, which is the biggest challenge fixing our schools? I would tell you poverty and broken families are a far bigger challenge than one constituency or interest group. And I'm the one person on this radio show that actually has gone toe-to-toe. Didn't talk about it. Did it. Now, I used to be 6'2" and 250 pounds, and I'm only at 5'8" and 148 dripping wet right now. But I've done it. But I'll tell you, the real challenge for a child getting acquiring reading skills, acquiring math skills, our force is far bigger than any single teacher can handle. The other part of navigating this is just being honest and frank with people. There's enough blame to go around, but there's a place telling us a solution. I don't care that it's a red state. It's a state in the union of this country, and they've shown something. They've never thrown their towel in on a child, and that's what I want to hold up and make as a not only example, I'm going to fund that. You adopt phonics and the methodology of Mississippi, we're going to help fund it. You adopt this new high school model, race to the top, we're going to adopt it. To me, there is no do-over The Jennings children don't fail school. Well, it's time that Scott Jennings and Rahm Emanuel don't fail the next generation. That's on us.
Let me shift gears and talk about Israel. You are born in Chicago to a Jewish family, and you have been an outspoken supporter of the alliance between the United States and Israel. You and I have actually spoken to some organizations together about a lot of these issues regarding Israel and regarding anti-Semitism in America. First question is a short one. Can someone who holds your views on our relationship with Israel and anti-Semitism right now be competitive in a Democratic primary in 2028?
Well, let me just say to you, people say about my Judaism or in Democratic primary, don't worry about my faith. Worry about the fact that Americans have lost faith in America. That's the faith you got to worry about. My Jewish education, my Jewish teachings, the Sabbath dinner I had as a family have been the moral foundation of who I am. I have fallen short many, many a time. But it's not my faith you have to worry about. It's the lack of faith that American people have in America today that is really holding us back. Number two, I am for the alliance. I'm highly critical, as you know, Scott, back to 2009 when Prime Minister Netanyahu called me a self-loathing Jew. I think abandoning the two-state solution has isolated Israel. It is more strategically secure today than ever before and more politically isolated than ever before. Scientists, academics, artists from Israel can't go anywhere. They're landlocked. They're isolated. Here in America, that we've always had bipartisan support for Israel, that's not happening. Now it's generational. I grew up at a time when the first prime minister of the founding fathers called Israel to be a light upon nations. We now have a prime minister who says Israel's going to be Sparta. And if you know history, it doesn't end well for Sparta. This is nuts. And I think he has made a series of decisions that have politically and strategically, most importantly, politically isolated the state of Israel that has many scientists, many artists, many things to offer the world and improve humanity. Israel was once admired for taking a desert and having a bloom. Kibbutzim kids that become startup nation. Today they're known for killing. And that's wrong. And I never backed down from the fight. A lot of other people whisper behind the prime minister's back. In 2009, 20 years ago, I went toe-to-toe with him in the Oval Office. To the point he said what he said. Because there will never be a river to the sea, and there will never be a greater Israel. Abandon those two-state solution, and the reason I'm for it. Jordan makes peace with Israel. Egypt makes peace with Israel. The Abraham Accords. Established states, established entities have given Israel not only the economic, but the political and strategic security. Standing up the West Bank as an independent entity like Ariel Sharon, like Yitzhak Rabin, like Ehud Olmert, like Ehud Barak, all of them saw that as key to Israel's security. There will never be a greater Israel, and the idea of spilling blood, losing political capital around the world for something that will not happen is not in Israel's self-interest. And it's not in America's interest to be tied to a failed endeavor. And allowing the killing of Palestinians by the settlers is absolutely wrong.
Rahm, what do you think we ought to do as a political culture, as Republicans, as Democrats, to beat back this rising tide of anti-Semitism in the United States? It's certainly on the rise, in my opinion, and getting more prominent in our political speech and among even some candidates and office holders every day.
Well, one of the things I think is, I said this outside of this country, there was a beautiful, the Imam of Australia when there was a shooting in Sydney, his prayer was incredible. When I was ambassador to Japan, somebody had sprayed Nazi insignia on our fence, and a neighbor cleaned it. Never came forward, never told me. Within 24 hours, it was gone. I used to hold Ramadan dinners every year as mayor. I did it as ambassador for all the Muslim ambassadors in the Muslim community in Japan. When the Tree of Life was attacked at the synagogue in western Pennsylvania, the first community to help the Jewish community was the Muslim community. These are people of faith. You can have differences about politics, but beating back anti-Semitism requires building bridges of empathy, appreciation, and understanding. I have seen the best, and I have seen the worst. And I say this on the best, and let me say this. I used to tease President Obama because when I ran for Congress, the Tribune made me, out of the 5 candidates, show my birth certificate. All other 5 candidates, nobody, just me. I've seen ugliness at every level. The predecessors in my congressional district were Dan Rostenkowski, Roman Puczynski, Frank Annunzio, Mike Flanagan, Rob Blagojevich, and along comes Rahm Emanuel. I've seen people look past a faith to look at a person and their character. We as a country have to do that. And the best way to attack anti-Semitism and hatred, which anti-Semitism is part of, is watching communities across racial, ethnic, or religious lines stand shoulder to shoulder. That's how you beat anti-Semitism.
That voice you're hearing on the show today, Rahm Emanuel, a possible candidate for president of the United States in 2028, a CNN political commentator, former ambassador, former mayor, former member of Congress. Rahm, we're grateful for your time today. Very interesting, some of the things you're saying as a potential presidential candidate, and I think having this conversation is valuable for you and valuable for our audience, so we appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Scott. Have a good one in Scottsdale.
All right, thanks, Rahm. Take care. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're just going to catch up on the news of the afternoon, a little bit of news. President Trump speaking today, a little bit more on the war coming in, a couple of other stories. We'll do all that when we come back. It's Common Sense for the American People. I'm Scott Jennings. We're on the road in Scottsdale. More after this.
Common Sense for the American People. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
Monday, March the 16th, home stretch on Common Sense for the American People. I want to thank Rahm Emanuel for coming on. I know some of you may be asking yourselves, what in the world are you doing interviewing Democrat candidates for president? But you know what I have come to believe? It's my responsibility to interview people who are in a position to impact what happens in your life, whether they're Republicans or Democrats. And tomorrow, in fact, on this show, I'm going to interview David Axelrod, my fellow CNN commentator. I'm out here in Arizona. I'm going to speak to his class at Arizona State tomorrow. But I want to talk to Ax about some of the same issues I talked to Rahm about, which is what's going on in the Democratic Party, which, as you know, I believe has gotten off the rails significantly. Rahm believes that too. Now, we may not see eye to eye on a lot of issues, but seeing eye to eye on the reality, that's important. And he sees eye to eye, I think, with a lot of you all out in the audience on the idea that the Democrats have gotten out of control with the woke stuff, that they've gotten out of control with education and taking their eye off the ball of results. I think these are valuable conversations for us to be having, and I'm gonna keep doing it because I love the cross-pollination here on the Scott Jennings Show. By the way, we did talk a little bit about Israel there with Rahm, and as we have been discussing, Operation Epic Fury is raging, and in the Holy Land, it is still true. We have missiles falling. The red alert sirens are filling the air, and when those sirens go off, they got about 15 seconds to get down to the bomb shelter. You don't have much time. I've been there. I was there last summer. You don't have much time, and it's at times like these when freedom and faith become something other than abstract ideas. They become exactly what you depend on in a moment. And that's why I want to bring you this message from the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. They are on the ground in Israel. They are preparing large-scale distributions of life-saving food and first aid and emergency essentials. It's going to go to security personnel. It goes to hospitals, emergency rooms, and these bomb shelters. They want to make sure they have supplies, medical supplies, food supplies in the shelters where people are hiding from these rocket attacks. The people who are impacted the most, frankly, here are the sick, the elderly, children, people that have young children. They're the ones who depend the most on the work that's being done by the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. If you want to help this mission and stand in prayerful support of Israel, I encourage you to go to supportifcj.org. That is supportifcj.org. This is a chance. You say you want to stand with Israel and the people of Israel, and you want to stand with the people of the Holy Land. Go to supportifcj.org. This is your moment. This is your moment to put your faith in action right here. A little bit of news before we break up the show today. sounds like, and this is just coming into the Scott Jennings Show, over at the White House, the president is going to sign an executive order this afternoon. You might remember that he previously, in the State of the Union, announced that Vice President Vance is going to be the point man in the administration on tackling all this fraud going on all over the country. That's being put into operation today. Let's listen to the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt in cut number 7.
What about President Trump signing this fraud task force executive order with our vice president?
Yes, later this afternoon in the Oval Office, the president and the vice president will formally launch their executive order and their task force against fraud. This is another promise made and kept by President Trump. He announced this in his State of the Union address and announced that the vice president would be overseeing this task force. So this is really going to establish a whole of government effort to fight fraud at both the state and the federal level in every state across the country. We look at states like California and New York. We know there's been hundreds of billions of fraudulent schemes that have ripped off American taxpayers. So we're going to turn every page to find and identify this fraud, to prosecute the individuals who are engaged in it. This will be, again, a whole of government effort led by the vice president, and the president will be signing that in the Oval Office this afternoon.
That's the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. All I can say to this is good. I got into it on CNN the other night with them, by the way. You know, they all of a sudden we're at war with Iran, and the report came out that at that point the war had cost $11 billion so far. And I just pointed out, well, we've spent more on Somali fraud in Minneapolis than we've spent on the war so far. Of course, they didn't like that very much, but it's true. All of a sudden, we spend $11 billion taking out the worst people in the world, and Democrats become fiscal conservatives, but they look the other way on all this fraud in Minnesota, New York, California. Hundreds of billions. The GAO report, in fact, maybe up to $1 trillion in fraud. Now the president putting Vice President Vance in charge of it. We'll take a look at that on the show tomorrow. Really appreciate being here at the studios of the Officer Brandon Tatum. Check him out on YouTube. We're still in Arizona tomorrow, live on campus at Arizona State. I'm Scott Jennings. Thanks for listening. See you then.